Hello! Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back. And for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. And welcome to the first video in a series of retro reviews that I'm going to be doing for the channel. That's going to be released every Wednesday. And I wanted to find an opportunity to really kind of explore old cinema. There's so many movies from the past that I've yet to watch, that I've yet to really sort of dive into and explore, and I thought this would be a great way, a great opportunity for me to do that. And so the first movie that I'm going to be reviewing for this series of retro reviews is the 1927 silent and synchronized sound war film Wings. And I've been really looking forward to checking this out. The movie won the first Academy Award for Best Picture, and I've never watched a silent film before. And so I was really looking forward to sitting down and experiencing this movie for the first time. The movie is directed by a William Wellman, and it's based during World War I, that follows two young men, Jack Powell and David Armstrong, who come from different social backgrounds but share a romantic rivalry over the same woman, Sylvia Lewis. As they enlist as fighter pilots, their initial animosity transforms into a deep friendship that's forged in the crucible of war. So Wings, this was not only the first time for me to watch this movie, it was also the first time for me to watch a silent film. And at first, it was a little bit jarring. But it didn't take long for me to get swept up, for me to get sucked in or swallowed up within this story with these characters. And first, I just want to mention, I want to touch on sort of the technical aspect of this movie and how this film was crafted from a technical perspective. I was in awe at what they achieved here with this movie, what they achieved within the frame. I absolutely adored how they shot the aerial dogfight scenes, where you've got the camera and just the way in which the camera is situated in front of the pilot or behind. And as a result of how the camera is situated, and by the fact that they actually shot these scenes for real, like they actually shot these planes flying and doing all of these maneuvers, you could just feel it, and as a result you get swept up within the moment. And I just found these moments to be incredibly thrilling, especially during the dogfight scenes. It gave me goosebumps. Like, it was thrilling, and a lot of it was down to how these moments were crafted and how the camera was used within these moments, and the fact that they're actually doing it for real, as well as you've got a lot of practical effects on display here. And I was just in awe at how the practical effects were sort of seamlessly incorporated into certain moments with our actors. I was just, from a technical perspective, in awe. And I just adored how the camera would be used and how certain scenes and moments would be framed. And, you know, it's as a result of how the movie was shot, would just, well, it did for me anyway, swallow me up within these characters' journeys and with what's going on. You know, it's World War I, and I think the film does a great job at kind of really capturing sort of the horror and sort of the authenticity of what is happening on the screen. Like, you could sense the horror and the dread of what is happening. And they do a fantastic job at capturing that through, you know, from a visual perspective. And I just love, again, just going back to how they used the camera within this movie. It was very dynamic. Like, for example, you'd have a moment with two characters sitting on a swing, sort of swaying back and forth, and the camera would be situated in a way where it's sort of swinging back and forth with these two characters on the swing. And it's a simple technique, I suppose, but it's also very effective at immersing you into the moment. And the camera is used like this, I felt, right throughout the movie. Another great moment within this movie that really kind of showcases that technique that they are using with the camera within this movie, that kind of very sort of dynamic approach, is the moment where all our characters are in this cafe in Paris, and it's a wonderful tracking shot where the camera just glides seamlessly over the tables, weaving through the patrons. And this was just a wonderful moment. Like, it's just another moment within this movie among many other moments where they use the camera in a way that just immerses you into the moment. It immerses you into the story, and I just absolutely loved it. I loved that aspect of this film. And as a result of this technique, with how they use the camera throughout this movie, wherever it, how it would be situated on a plane, or where you've just got two characters together on a swing, or like you have a certain shot that's framed in a way that kind of just immerses you into the moment. It's the way in which this film is crafted from a technical perspective that just really kind of, well, it did for me anyway, just allowed me to be swallowed up within this very charming, emotional, thrilling experience where you have these characters sort of experiencing very human emotions, but something that was also very horrific and something that, nobody would want to experience. And what kind of really, so for me, sort of got, other than the fact that they really did a good job at capturing the horror within the frame of World War I, was sort of the realization that this movie was made not long after the Great War. And there is just something within sort of the essence of this movie that you could kind of feel that, the kind of the horror and sort of the after effects and what it is that people had to endure during that time, and they managed to do a really good job at kind of capturing that through the entire experience, or sort of the entire way in which they sort of tell this story through its narrative, I felt. And you've got this very sort of whimsical, dry, and even dark in moments sense of humour running throughout the movie that kind of really sort of helps balance out sort of the weight of its, that emotional weight of its story with what these characters are going through with, World War I. The way in which the humour is incorporated throughout the movie, it does do a great job at kind of really acting as that kind of, levity from sort of the more intense, darker aspect of what these characters are going through. There are moments where I felt like it gets quite silly, where you've got our main character, one of our main characters, Jack Powell, getting drunk and sort of in Paris with all these women and just seeing all these bubbles. But I feel like that kind of the silliness of the moment does a really good job at conveying that sharp contrast of what these characters are actually going through emotionally, and with what they're having to experience to sort of through the horror of war, and sort of reflecting sort of the change and the path that their lives are on because of the Great War. And I just feel like for the comedic aspect really kind of aids in sort of getting that across, you could say, sort of with what these characters are going through, emotionally within these moments. The score is composed by a John Stepan Zemanek. I think that's how you pronounce the name. Apologies if it's incorrect. But like with how the movie is constructed, from how they use the camera, the music also does a great job at kind of conveying what is happening on the screen by sort of swallowing you up within the moment. It's a very sweeping score, and I absolutely, the piece of music that I absolutely loved was the moments during the dogfights, the aerial dogfights, and you kind of got this clambering of metal within the score that really kind of reminded me of a James Horner score. For example, like Aliens, there was elements that kind of really sort of took me back to, say, for example, James Horner. But the music just does a wonderful job at really bringing to life what is happening on the screen in a way that just immerses you, the viewer, or it did with me anyway, into the moment. It added to the thrill, it added to the excitement, and it added to the emotion. I really dug the score here. Like I said, along with how the camera is used and just with how this entire experience was constructed, it does a fantastic job at kind of elevating the experience and just sucking you into the moment, swallowing you up within sort of that kind of the emotional aspect of its story. And the love story, which is the big beating heart of this film, this story, I really liked it. It is very emotional. It's very sweet. It's heartbreaking. It's kind of tragic in many ways, where you've got this character played by Clara Bow, who plays Mary Preston. She's the friend of Jack Powell, and she's absolutely in love with him. She admires him, but Jack doesn't see that, and he's infatuated with this other woman, Sylvia. And it's just one of those love stories that is done in a way that is captured beautifully by the performances. Like, remember, you know, this is a silent film, and I just felt like what they actually achieved here within this movie by sort of expressing what these characters are feeling through the performances. Like, all of the performances within this movie are great, and they say so much. They sort of, and the performances all around just do a wonderful job at really conveying what these characters are feeling. And Clara Bow, I thought, was amazing here. It was beautiful. It was in many ways a heartbreaking performance, but there is a moment right at the end. It's the final shot of the movie where you've got our two main characters, Mary and Jack, and it's bittersweet. And it really did make me smile. Like, I had this kind of beaming, genuine smile at the end of this movie. And I just really liked what they did with the love story within this film. A minor gripe that I do have with it, though, and that is I do feel like that kind of story between these characters, so the friendship that forms between Jack and David, and sort of this love story, you know, with Mary and Sylvia, where you've got Sylvia who doesn't love Jack, but Jack loves Sylvia. It's brought to life beautifully through the performances and how it's conveyed within the frame, but it does sometimes, or it does somewhat get lost. Like, one of the sort of the gripes that I had with the overall experience was, even though I am immersed within sort of these characters' journeys, was it did feel a little bit bloated at times. And so there would be moments where we would perhaps linger on certain scenes and moments, whatever it be, you know, during the war scenes, for example, which I think did a great job of conveying the horror. But I just felt like there were moments that they could have just pulled back a little bit and cut a little bit short, because I do feel like the film loses focus at times on what the big beating heart of the story is, and that is this kind of the relationship between these characters. And even though it is successful to a degree at bringing that kind of the friendship and the sort of the love story aspect of the movie to life, it does at times kind of forget about it as well, you could say. But it wasn't anything major for me. But there would be moments, for example, where I would be sitting there and I'd be sort of enjoying, and I would be immersed within a certain scene or within a certain moment, but then I would be like, oh, we're lingering just a little bit too long here. And is it because the director really wants to sort of set up and sort of construct this certain scene and frame this certain moment in a way where he's doing it more for an artistic reason, not to sort of kind of really aid the story or aid these characters' journeys, if that makes any sense. That's how it felt in moments. Charles Rogers as Jack Powell, this car enthusiast who's buddies with Mary, the neighbour. And, you know, you got Mary who is absolutely infatuated with him, but he doesn't see it, and he's in love with Sylvia, whereas Sylvia doesn't love him back. And, you know, he does a great job as well. There is a moment with Charles Rogers as Jack Powell and Richard Arlen as David Armstrong, and it's a very tragic moment. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled by this movie at all, please stop watching now. You know, there are going to be spoilers within these reviews, but I don't really want to spoil anything for those that haven't seen these films yet either. So stop watching. But it's a moment where David Armstrong dies, and the way in which that happens, it is heartbreaking. And the scene with the two of them sort of embracing each other is incredibly powerful. Like, it was very emotional, and it's all aided by these performances. And I just felt Charles Rogers' year was amazing. His performance was absolutely beautiful, as well as Richard Arlen, who brings David Armstrong to life. There is so much being said through their performances, and when you come to movies like this, there is the performances are relied on very heavily because they have to convey so much through what these characters are feeling emotionally. And even though don't get me wrong, this is not the most emotionally complex movie you're ever going to experience, there is a lot being said or a lot being conveyed through the performances within this movie that kind of really help heighten that emotional heartbeat, that emotional current within its story. So yeah, Wings, I think it achieves so much, especially from a technical perspective. I adore this movie from how it was crafted from a technical perspective. The story with our characters, the kind of the friendship, and sort of that kind of the love rivalry between our characters with Sylvia and Mary, there is a charm to that. It is powerful, it is emotional, it is tragic. But it does sometimes get lost within what I feel sometimes feels like a bloated experience, where perhaps we are lingering on moments that we don't particularly need to. At the same time, in turn, it kind of does a really good job at really conveying and capturing the horrors of what was World War One, the Great War, and sort of what that does to people, sort of that generation of young men and women. And you can feel that within the story of these characters, and I found it to be a very mesmerising and thrilling experience, but one that I found emotional, not just because of what these characters are going through and sort of their relationships with one another, but how it captures that certain time that happened in the past where these lives were changed, and sort of what is kind of, I felt like it does a good job at exploring with the themes as well. Like, for example, with how war can corrupt even the most innocent of people. And I just felt like this was definitely an experience where, it is deep. And it's an experience that kind of sort of ends on a very kind of bittersweet note, a very hopeful note. And it really kind of made me smile, it made me beam, because you've got these two characters, Mary and Jack, and they end up together because, Jack just didn't realise that actually, no, he loves Mary. And to get to that point, it's quite emotional, it's very very heartbreaking, and tragic. It leaves on a very bittersweet, hopeful note that I really found myself admiring. So yeah, Wings, it's not as streamlined as it could have been. It's over 2 hours long. And I just couldn't help but be in awe at what was being, brought to life within the frame. I just admired how the camera was being used and utilised within certain moments. I mean, the aerial dogfights in this film are epic. Like, they feel real as a result of how they've been filmed. Like, these were actual pilots in these planes flying, and you can feel it, and the movie just sucks you into these moments and just how the camera would be used within these moments. The film works incredibly well at capturing the horrors of war, as well as sort of really kind of capturing that more human aspect of its characters, with this kind of love story that's going on and this friendship that forges during sort of this experience of, World War One. But it does sometimes kind of lose focus a little bit, especially on what is that big beating heart of the movie. But I absolutely enjoyed this experience. This was a great experience. It's the first time for me to experience this movie, and there's a lot that I really kind of want to dig into behind the scenes. There's so much that I feel like I would want to sort of explore with this movie and how it was sort of brought to life. But these are my initial thoughts of Wings. And so yeah, enough rambling from me. They are my thoughts on Wings, and I will be giving Wings guys think. Have any of you seen Wings from 1927, the first movie to win an Academy Award for Best Picture? Let me know below. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review in this series of retro reviews will be Midnight Cowboy, another movie that I've not seen before. I've heard of it, but I've never watched it, and I'm really looking forward to checking that out for the first time, and that will be my next review next Wednesday. And just a big thank you to everyone that's connected to the channel, wherever it be, liking, commenting and subscribing. It means the world to me. I am slowly creeping towards that 500 milestone, and I know I say this all the time, but it will always overwhelm me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and TV. But it means the world to me, and I absolutely love doing this, and I look forward to exploring old cinema, the history of cinema. And you know, just watching Wings for me was an experience where I felt like I was learning so much about a certain era of cinema that I've never witnessed before, that I've never experienced. I just found myself learning, and I just found myself in awe and mesmerized by what was being actually brought to life within that time period. And you know, you kind of see as well sort of a lot of directors that you love, or I love today, for example, like Steven Spielberg, for example. I could see certain things within this movie where I was like, oh, I wonder if that's what inspired Spielberg, because there would be certain moments in which how they would be framed or how they would be shot that had a bit of a Spielberg vibe to them, and it made me wonder that actually were these the movies that inspired the filmmakers that I fell in love with. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think of my first retro review. Any feedback, comments, let me know below. So yeah, enough rambling. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.